Now we look at the Uranus cycle, and this one is more mixed, but what was helpful was that right at election time, it was, let us call it, conveniently placed so that it didn't become a big aggravation. It was around 21 degrees plus at election time. So this reduced the tremendous pressure that it was bringing to bear in the summer of 2016 when it was further up around 24, 25 degrees, squaring these 12th house planets. By election time, it had backtracked, and so there was much less direct pressure. Of course, it was signaling there was trouble ahead, and in fact, this planet, the following year, in May, once again squared those planets, and it was concurrent with the Comey firing and the appointment of Mueller and the tremendous firestorm that he started, that then led to all kinds of trouble for him. But at the time of the election, it was far enough back that it didn't cause a whole lot of trouble. It's a really important planet in his chart. You can see natally conjunct the sun near these nodes opposite the moon. This is definitely one of the energies that defines Trump to a T. He is constantly rebelling against everything. He is his own person, obviously. A planet like this is a great asset in terms of being very independent. But to my understanding, it's very poorly developed in his personality. And so the way he expresses his independence and his individuality is constantly getting him in trouble. And overall, this planet is not very helpful because once you put a planet too close to the sun and opposite the moon, it's nearly always going to cause trouble, which was in fact what it did the following year. But as I say, at election time, he got lucky in that it wasn't close enough to be a big problem. Before I go into what this planet is doing in the 2020 election year, and it is a critical factor, I'm going to backtrack a little bit and go back to 2016 again to show how this planet is really critical in Trump's personality, Trump's way of doing things, as well as the things that tend to happen to him, because Uranus is so connected to his sun and moon that the rebellious, contrarian, rash decision-making style is completely linked to Uranus, but it gets him in trouble more or less constantly. We go back to the summer of 16, and Uranus is around the 25th degree of Aries, and it's squaring the 12th house planets, and that was when he was cooking up the Russian scheme, clearly colluding with them, even though he later said no collusion a million times. It's exactly what he was doing. Unsurprising, because the 12th sign in a person like Trump is his criminal nature. And so here we have the 9th, which is a foreign affairs, international house, and you've got the square to the 12th, and you've got the perfect explanation. But then around the election, it had backtracked, as I said, it to a convenient spot where it wasn't aggravating too much. Then he gets elected, and what happens is right away he's being investigated over the Russia issue, and by May it had returned, Uranus had returned to those very degrees where it had been the previous summer when he set the scheme in motion. And so by May he has to fire Comey, which then led to the appointment of Mueller, and all kinds of headaches that resulted from that over the months that followed. And Uranus made its final connection with these degrees in early 2018 when that book by Michael Wolff was released, Fire and Fury, and that was the first exposition of the insanity that was going on at the White House. It was also the month when he called himself a stable genius, which is funny because a Uranus alignment like this, you would almost say, no, that's actually an unstable genius, but whatever, that's what he was doing. And then Uranus, from that point, moved forward and went into Taurus. It entered Taurus significantly for him in 2019. The key period was when it reaches the 5th, 6th degree, because what happens is, now we're shifting to 2019, 2020, when Uranus is going through the 5 to 10 degrees Taurus, it makes a sesqui square to his moon and a semi-square to the sun. These aspects are the half square points, and they're in the 8th harmonic, and they are less challenging, less irritating than a full square or a full opposition. But when you talk about a planet of the magnitude of Uranus, an 84-year cycle, these periods are significant. And the way you know is that the planet will hang around for quite a long time through those degrees. And so in the case of Trump, from the summer of 19 all the way to the spring, late spring actually, of 21, Uranus is in these degrees. And it's fascinating to notice that it just entered these degrees and was full on making a sesqui and almost a semi to the sun when he made that fateful Ukraine call that then led to him getting caught, and then the whole firestorm around the impeachment resulted, and he had to deal with that, which he can say he got away, but that was a definite black mark that will now haunt him, both in terms of his record as well as during the election of 2020. Now in 2020 itself, it's entering those degrees again as we speak. It's going back in, and it's going to pretty much right through the election be in sesqui in this direction and semi in that direction. This is not good at all. It's going to keep him in a constant state of tension. It will also contribute to his rash decision making, particularly when you pair it with the Jupiter cycle, because Jupiter is opposing these planets the whole time. So it's Jupiter is the overreach, the overconfident approach, and then you pair it with the rashness of Uranus, and you just get bad results. And so bottom line, this planet is not helping him at all during 2020, and we can now add it to what has been said about Jupiter as well as Neptune, and that makes 3. Now, for those of you that like the astrological dynamics, I can add another transit in Trump's recent Uranus cycles, which is that in early 2019, it was actually trining his ascendant, because if you look at his chart, in the 25th degree, really from 23, 24, 25, 26, it's squaring those 12th house planets. But then at 29, 29:30 basically, the very end, it trines the ascendant. And in early 2019, it's stationed at 28 plus, so it's basically making a trine to that ascendant. And normally you'd think the trine is positive, but this illustrates a rule in astrology which one should always remember, and it is that a planet that at birth is making hard aspects will often fail to help you when it goes into a trine, because it brings that disruptive, difficult energy into the trine, and it just shows up all too easily. And what this guy did in early 2019, if you recall, is he shut down the government. He thought it was a brilliant idea, and he had been thinking about it a long time, and this was the time. He was probably sore because he got whooped in the 2018 elections, and so he shuts down the government. Didn't work out at all. His approval rating went into the 30s, and then he basically had to let it go, and the whole experience was Uranus running amok.